master gardener watched his apprentice struggling to straighten a young crooked tree, pulling and forcing it with ropes and rigid stakes. "Master," said the young man, breathless, "this tree refuses to grow straight. The more I insist, the more it resists." The old sage smiled and approached the tree. With infinite gentleness, he tied a soft rope to a low branch and connected it delicately to a stake, creating a light but constant tension. "You see," he murmured, "nature only yields to what embraces it. Brute force breeds resistance. Patient gentleness breeds transformation." This parable captures the essence of a silent revolution in our way of conceiving personal development and inner growth. We have been conditioned to imagine discipline as an inner battle. Push harder, do more, grind, force. This military vision of personal change exhausts us, generates resistance and guilt, and often produces the opposite effect of what we seek. Yet contemplative traditions orient us toward a radically different path. They teach us that true transformation arises not from constraint, but from kindness toward ourselves, that gentleness is not the opposite of strength, but a refined, stable, and sustainable strength. That water, in its apparently fragile fluidity, eventually sculpts the hardest mountains. This approach, which we can call gentle discipline, is deeply rooted in Taoist wisdom, particularly in the principle of Wu Wei. This natural action that accomplishes without forcing, that transforms without violence, that guides without constraint. It invites us to an inner revolution, that of treating ourselves as we would treat a beloved being, with patience, understanding, and benevolent encouragement. This transformation of our relationship with ourselves opens unsuspected possibilities. When we cease struggling against our own nature to learn to cultivate it with tenderness, when we replace self-criticism with self-compassion, when we discover that lasting change arises from love and not from fear, our entire life is metamorphosed. This metamorphosis leads us through 5 essential dimensions of gentle discipline. First, understanding that true strength lies in compassionate gentleness. Then, discovering the art of effortless action, according to Wu Wei. Then, creating nourishing rituals rather than constraining routines. Then, abandoning the quest for perfection to cultivate the art of beginning again. And finally, transforming our relationship with ourselves by moving from control to caring attention. In this exploration is revealed perhaps one of the deepest secrets of human existence. We are not our own enemies to tame, but our most precious gardens to cultivate with patience and love. When we hear the word discipline, our mind often evokes images of rigid control, painful deprivations, iron will imposed against all resistance. This martial conception of personal development runs through our culture like a rarely questioned given. To change, one would need to do violence to oneself, to constrain oneself, to take oneself in hand with an iron grip. This approach reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. We are not machines that need only be reprogrammed by force, but living beings who respond to the subtle laws of organic growth. Just as a wise gardener does not shout at his plants to make them grow faster, we cannot transform ourselves sustainably through aggression toward ourselves. The Taoist tradition offers us a radically different vision through the image of water. Nothing in the world is softer and weaker than water, teaches the Tao Te Ching. And yet, For attacking what is hard and strong, nothing can surpass it. This metaphor reveals the nature of true strength, not the rigidity that breaks under pressure, but the suppleness that persists and transforms everything in its path. The strength of water manifests through its capacity to perfectly embrace each form it encounters while keeping its essential direction. It does not struggle against obstacles. It goes around them or erodes them patiently. It does not force its way. It finds the natural passage. This intelligence of adaptation reveals the secret of gentle discipline, working with our nature rather than against it. A Zen master told this story. A student came to me desperate. "Master," he said, "I have been meditating for years, but my anger is still there. The more I fight against it, the more it resists. What should I do?" I answered him, "Stop considering your anger as your enemy. Treat it as you would treat a wounded child who cries. Listen to what it is trying to tell you. Welcome it with compassion." A few months later, he returned transformed. His anger had not left him, but it had become his counselor. The story perfectly illustrates the fundamental principle of gentle discipline. Lasting change arises from self-respect, not from self-punishment. When we cease seeing our flaws as enemies to eradicate, to consider them as aspects of ourselves that need understanding and transformation, everything changes. This transformation begins by recognizing that our inner resistance is not a sign of weakness, but often an intelligent protection against too brutal approaches. When we impose draconian changes on ourselves without listening to our deep needs, are being rebels naturally. This rebellion is not laziness or cowardice, but the wisdom of our total being that refuses to be mistreated. Compassion then becomes not a sentimental weakness, but the very energy of transformation. As Buddhist tradition teaches, authentic compassion possesses immense strength. It can transform what anger and criticism only harden. This compassionate force, applied to ourselves, becomes the soil in which our best self can blossom naturally. This benevolent approach reveals that we carry within ourselves two apparently contradictory forces. On one side, sincere aspiration to change and growth. On the other, natural attachment to our familiar habits. Instead of seeing these forces as antagonistic, gentle discipline recognizes them as complementary. Our resistance to change often carries wisdom. It protects us from transformations that are too rapid or unsuited to our real rhythm. This recognition transforms our inner dialogue. Instead of criticizing ourselves, "I have no willpower," we can question ourselves with kindness. What makes this change difficult for me right now? This quality of attention often reveals neglected needs, legitimate fears, personal rhythms that ask to be respected. A Taoist sage taught, when you want a horse to follow you, do not pull on its bridle, walk before it toward a green meadow, and it will come by itself. This metaphor applies perfectly to our relationship with our own aspirations. Instead of forcing ourselves toward our goals, we can make them so attractive, so aligned with our deep nature, that we naturally move toward them. This natural attraction arises from understanding our authentic motivations. Often we impose goals on ourselves that correspond more to external expectations than to our true aspirations. Gentle discipline invites us to benevolent exploration. What truly animates us? What changes serve our authentic flourishing rather than our social image? This exploration reveals that gentleness toward oneself is by no means complacency. It is, on the contrary, a superior requirement, that of authenticity. It is much easier to conform to external expectations than to listen to one's inner voice. True gentleness requires the courage of honesty toward oneself. This benevolent honesty transforms our relationship to effort. Instead of seeing effort as necessary suffering, we discover that it can become a natural expression of our vitality. When our actions align with our deep nature, effort becomes fluid, like the graceful movement of the dancer who does not struggle against the music, but harmonizes perfectly with it. The Taoist principle of Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action, reveals one of the deepest dimensions of gentle discipline. This notion, frequently misunderstood in the West, does not advocate inaction or passivity, but rather the art of aligned action. This capacity to act in harmony with the natural movement of things, without unnecessary friction, without sterile resistance. Imagine an experienced kayaker navigating a tumultuous river. He does not fight against the current, but uses its strength to advance. He does not resist the eddies, but embraces them to maintain his balance. His effort is intense, but never tense, determined but never rigid. This image captures the essence of Wu Wei, applied to personal discipline, acting with determination but without tension, persevering without forcing oneself. This quality of action radically transforms our experience of effort. In traditional discipline, we often exhaust ourselves in a struggle against ourselves. Our laziness, our resistances, our habits, this inner battle consumes considerable energy before we have even begun the action proper. Wu Wei teaches us to eliminate this internal friction, to channel all our energy toward the objective. A martial arts master explained to his students, when you strike with anger, half your strength is lost in the tension of your muscles. When you strike with serenity, all your power concentrates in the movement. This truth applies perfectly to our personal goals. When we act with anxiety, self-criticism, and haste, we waste precious energy. When we act with presence and benevolence toward ourselves, our effectiveness multiplies. This effectiveness of Wu Wei manifests first through our capacity to identify the next light step. Instead of projecting ourselves toward monumental objectives that paralyze us by their scope, we learn to perceive the smallest possible action that brings us closer to our intention. This micro-step approach eliminates the resistance generated by too ambitious changes. Take the example of someone who wishes to develop a meditation practice. The conventional approach would consist of immediately imposing 20 or 30 daily minutes, often generating failure and guilt. Wu Wei rather suggests starting with 3 conscious breaths each morning. This simplicity disarms resistance and creates natural momentum toward more. This micro-engagement strategy reveals a profound truth about the nature of change. It rarely proceeds by spectacular revolutions, but by accumulation of subtle transformations. Like water that hollows rock drop by drop, our small daily gestures progressively shape our being. This understanding liberates from the impatience and frustration that often accompany our personal development efforts. Wu Wei also teaches us the art of letting go at the heart of action. This paradoxical capacity consists of maintaining our direction while remaining open to necessary adjustments. Like the navigator who keeps course while constantly adapting his sails to changing winds, we learn to persevere with suppleness. This suppleness in perseverance transforms our relationship to obstacles. Instead of seeing them as failures of our method, we recognize them as precious information about necessary adjustments. A project that stagnates perhaps invites us to reconsider our approach. A habit that resists perhaps signals an unsatisfied need that must first be honored. This attentive listening to resistance reveals the most subtle dimension of Wu Wei, the capacity to distinguish useful resistances from destructive resistances. Sometimes our resistance protects us from an unsuited direction. Sometimes it simply maintains the status quo by habit. Wisdom consists in developing the discernment that allows us to make this distinction. A Taoist tale tells the story of a farmer whose field was crossed by a capricious stream that often changed course. Instead of building rigid dams that broke at each flood, he learned to shape supple banks that guided the water without constraining it. Thus the stream watered his crops instead of destroying them. This hydraulic wisdom applies perfectly to our personal goals, creating structures that guide without constraining, that orient without forcing. These supple structures manifest through our capacity to create environments that naturally favor desired behaviors. Instead of counting solely on our willpower, we arrange our context so that it supports us. This ecological approach to discipline recognizes that we are influenced by our environment and uses this influence constructively. This contextual intelligence reveals that Wu Wei is not only a personal attitude, but a way of organizing our life that minimizes unnecessary friction. When our aspirations accord with our natural rhythm, when our environment supports our goals, when our actions are rooted in our authentic nature, discipline becomes fluid. This fluidity does not mean constant ease, but absence of struggle against ourselves. We can provide considerable efforts while remaining aligned with our natural movement. This crucial distinction liberates from the illusion that transformation must necessarily be painful to be authentic. Gentle discipline reveals its particular wisdom in the art of creating rituals rather than routines. This distinction, apparently subtle, radically transforms our experience of personal development. While a routine imposes itself as an external obligation, a ritual offers itself as a moment of return to self, a sacred space in daily life that reconnects us to our deep intentions. Rituals possess a particular quality that distinguishes them from simple habits. They are invested with consciousness and meaning. When we drink our morning tea in full presence, this gesture becomes a ritual that anchors us in the moment and prepares our spirit for the day. When we write a few lines in a journal before sleeping, we create a bridge between our lived experience and our understanding, between our diurnal agitation and our nocturnal peace. This ritual quality transforms even the simplest actions into occasions for renewal. 3 conscious breaths before opening a screen, a few minutes of attentive walking, a moment of silence upon returning home. These micro-rituals create islands of presence in the ocean of our automatic activities. A Zen master taught, the difference between a chore and a meditation lies entirely in the quality of attention you bring to it. Washing dishes with presence becomes more precious than an hour of distracted meditation. This truth reveals the transformative power of rituals. They do not depend on particular conditions, but on our capacity to fully inhabit the moment. This full inhabitation of the moment naturally calms our nervous system. In a world of constant stimulations, these ritual moments offer our being the breathing space it needs to regenerate. They create what neuroscience calls a relaxation response that counterbalances the chronic stress of our modern lives. This soothing dimension of rituals reveals their profound function. They do not aim first at efficiency or performance, but at reconnection with our center. In this reconnection is found, paradoxically, the source of more durable efficiency than that obtained by force. When we act from our center, our actions carry a natural quality that hits the mark. This natural rightness arises from the confidence that rituals create in our own rhythm. Unlike routines imposed from outside, rituals emerge from our inner listening. They respect our natural cycles of energy, our fluctuating needs, our personal seasons. This personalization makes them nourish us instead of exhausting us. The Taoist tradition expresses this truth through the image of seasons. The wise tree does not flower in winter, nor lose its leaves in summer. It follows the natural rhythm that animates it. Similarly, our rituals adapt to our inner rhythms. Morning may call for an energizing practice, evening for a calming activity. Inner winter may ask for more contemplation, inner summer for more creative expression. This adaptation to rhythms reveals that authentic rituals are not rigid, but organic. They evolve with us, deepen with time, transform according to our changing needs. This fluidity keeps them alive and relevant, preventing them from becoming empty mechanisms. A Zen tale tells the story of a monk who had developed a morning ritual of contemplation in his garden. When winter came and the flowers disappeared, he maintained his practice, discovering the austere beauty of bare branches. When spring returned, he welcomed the new shoots like old friends found again. His ritual had remained the same in form, but it enriched itself in content, revealing new dimensions of beauty each season. This capacity for deepening reveals one of the most precious riches of rituals. They create a familiarity that allows discovery. Unlike habit that puts consciousness to sleep, ritual sharpens it. By returning to the same gesture with presence, we discover ever new nuances, ever more subtle teachings. This growing subtlety transforms our relationship to repetition. Instead of undergoing it as monotony, we inhabit it as an ascending spiral. Each return to the same ritual brings us back to the same external place, but to a different level of understanding and presence. This spiral of deepening reveals that the most powerful rituals are often the simplest. Rather than accumulating numerous practices, we can deepen a few essential gestures until they become doors to our essence. This concentration avoids the dispersion that weakens so many personal development efforts. The simplicity of authentic rituals makes them accessible even in difficult periods. When life becomes chaotic, we can temporarily abandon complex practices, but we can always find the sanctuary of a few conscious breaths or a moment of silent gratitude. This constant availability makes rituals true inner refuges. One of the most liberating aspects of gentle discipline lies in the radical abandonment of the quest for perfection. This liberation transforms our relationship to failure, recommencement, and progress in a way that completely revolutionizes our experience of personal growth. Perfection, this tyrannical idol of our epoch, maintains many of us in a state of paralysis. We postpone beginning until we have found the perfect method, the perfect conditions, the perfect moment. This quest for the ideal often deprives us of real experience, imperfect but living, which alone can transform us. The Zen tradition offers us a powerful antidote to this paralysis through the liberating teaching. Begin where you are, and begin again endlessly. This simple formula reveals that perfection is not the goal of the path, but the main obstacle that prevents us from starting it. True wisdom consists in preferring imperfect action to perfect inaction. This preference for imperfect action transforms our relationship to failure. Instead of seeing our errors as proof of our incompetence, we recognize them as natural and necessary stages of learning. A master calligrapher said to his students, "Your first thousands of strokes will be clumsy. This is perfect. This is exactly what must happen for your hands to learn rightness." This pedagogy of imperfection reveals that our failures are not deviations from the path, but the path itself. Each time we lose our rhythm, each time we fall back into old habits, each time we move away from our intentions, we have the opportunity to practice the art of beginning again. This art perhaps constitutes the most precious skill we can develop. Beginning again differs radically from starting over from zero. Starting over from zero implies that all the path traveled was useless, that we must erase our past experiences to restart on new bases. Beginning again, on the contrary, honors everything that has been lived and makes it the soil of a new departure. Each new beginning integrates the wisdom of previous attempts. This integration reveals that our progression is never linear, but spiraled. We pass again through apparently similar points, but at a different level of maturity and understanding. This spiraled vision of progress liberates from the frustration of those who expect constant and regular development. A Taoist sage compared personal growth to the movement of seasons. After each winter comes a new spring, but the tree that flowers is no longer exactly the same as that of the previous year. It has integrated all the experience of the elapsed year. Similarly, each time we return to our intentions after a period of wandering, we are no longer quite the same. We have learned something from our detour. This wisdom of detour transforms our relationship to what we call losing the thread. Instead of dramatizing these moments of dispersion, we can welcome them as natural phases of our personal rhythm. Sometimes we need to move away from our objectives to better understand why they matter to us. Sometimes our deviations teach us essential things that the direct path would not have revealed. This acceptance of cycles transforms discipline into a dance rather than a forced march. Like the dancer who accepts sometimes losing the rhythm to better find it again, we learn that constancy is not rigidity, but loyalty to our general direction. This loyalty can accommodate variations, pauses, resumptions. This flexibility and constancy reveals that gentle discipline honors our biological and natural rhythms. We are not machines that function identically day after day. We go through periods of expansion and contraction, momentum and rest, clarity and confusion. True wisdom consists in adapting our practice to these fluctuations rather than resisting them. This rhythmic adaptation teaches us a superior form of perseverance, that which knows when to persist and when to let go, when to push and when to wait, when to maintain and when to transform. This flexible intelligence saves us from the exhaustion of blind perseverance while keeping us from premature abandonment. A master gardener explained, "Some seeds germinate in a few days, others need months. Some flower in spring, others in autumn. The gardener's patience consists in respecting the timing of each plant while maintaining conditions favorable to growth." This active patience applies perfectly to our personal objectives, maintaining conditions favorable to change while respecting our unique rhythm of transformation. This patience reveals that beginning again is not a punishment, but a grace. Each morning offers us a blank page, each moment a possibility of realignment. This permanent generosity of existence liberates us from the prison of our past errors and opens us to the infinite space of perpetual recommencement. The most revolutionary dimension of gentle discipline perhaps lies in this fundamental transformation, moving from self-control to self-care. This mutation, which may seem subtle, radically changes the very nature of our personal development efforts and reveals a path of profound wisdom and effectiveness. Self-control, the dominant paradigm of traditional discipline, functions according to a logic of surveillance and constraint. It involves monitoring our impulses, constraining our desires, forcing our resistances. This approach inevitably creates an inner division between a controlling self and a controlled self, generating permanent tension that exhausts our resources. Self-care proceeds from a radically different logic, that of benevolent accompaniment. Instead of imposing on ourselves from the outside what would be good for us, we learn to listen with finesse to our authentic needs and respond to them with wisdom. This approach creates an inner unification where all our parts collaborate toward our flourishing. This unification transforms our inner dialogue. Instead of the critical voice that judges and condemns, we develop the voice of the wise companion who understands and guides. This voice does not minimize our challenges nor excuse our lapses, but replaces them in the broader perspective of our global growth. A sage explained, "When a child falls while learning to walk, no one scolds him for his clumsiness. We encourage him, reassure him, help him get up. Why don't we treat ourselves with the same kindness when we learn new ways of being?" This question reveals the absurdity of our severity toward ourselves and opens the way toward intelligent compassion toward oneself. This intelligent compassion is distinguished from complacency by its capacity to see the situation clearly without losing benevolence. It can recognize our errors without condemning us, identify our resistances without judging us, perceive our needs for growth without diminishing us. This compassionate clarity becomes the foundation of authentic and lasting transformation. This transformation is rooted in the recognition that we are complex beings carrying within us elevated aspirations and ancient fears, generous impulses and protective reflexes, remarkable capacities and human limitations. Self-care accepts this complexity as our basic reality and works with it rather than against it. This acceptance reveals that our flaws are often only poorly oriented qualities or poorly expressed needs. Our tendency to postpone may reveal a need for reflection that we don't allow ourselves. Our anger may signal important boundaries that we don't dare set. Our agitation may express a creativity seeking an outlet. This reevaluation of our problems transforms our approach to change. Instead of seeking to eliminate our difficult aspects, we learn to understand their messages and transform them into allies of our growth. This inner alchemy reveals the deepest dimension of self-care, the capacity to see the hidden potential in each aspect of our being. This transformative vision extends to our relationship with time and rhythm. Self-control often imposes artificial rhythms dictated by impatience or comparison with others. Self-care respects our natural cycles and honors the unique timing of our development. This active patience avoids the exhaustion that arises from forced acceleration. A Taoist master taught, "Water that flows slowly digs deeper than water that rushes. True transformation requires time to take root." This hydraulic wisdom applies perfectly to our efforts at change. Better slow but deep modifications than spectacular but ephemeral revolutions. This depth in change reveals that self-care nourishes instead of exhausting, clarifies instead of restricting, harmonizes instead of hardening. It becomes a path of inner alignment where our actions, intentions, and energy move together in the same direction. This inner coherence generates a quiet strength that can accomplish remarkable transformations without violent effort. This quiet strength stabilizes us instead of agitating us, softens us instead of rigidifying us. It makes us reliable companions for our own growth, capable of accompanying ourselves with patience through all the seasons of our development. In this benevolent faithfulness toward ourselves is found perhaps the key to all authentic and lasting transformation. At the end of this exploration, gentle discipline reveals its true nature. Not a method among others, but an entirely different way of inhabiting our human condition. It teaches us that we don't have to fight against ourselves to grow, but that we can cultivate ourselves with the same tenderness that a wise gardener cultivates his most precious plants. This patient cultivation transforms everything. Our objectives become clearer because they are rooted in our authenticity. Our efforts become more effective because they cease struggling against our nature. Our failures become instructive because they no longer condemn us. Our successes become more satisfying because they express who we really are. Moreover, this approach reveals that true strength is not in self-domination, but in harmony with oneself. That true discipline is not in constraint, but in alignment. That true growth is not in violence done to our nature, but in its guided flourishing with wisdom.